The phone rang, and the moment it was answered, everything went off the rails. Because according to insiders, BlueFace didn't just call his mom that night, he called her Chrisean. Not as a joke. Not accidentally. Not playfully. He said it sharp, cold, and loaded with anger. And the silence on the other end of that call? It was the kind that hits harder than screaming. Sources say BlueFace's tone was already aggressive when the call connected. No greeting. No, "Hey mom." Just instant frustration spilling out like a dam finally breaking. And then he said the words no son ever expects to say to his mother. "You need to grow up." That sentence alone detonated the entire situation. Because this wasn't just a family argument. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't stress. This was years of resentment, chaos, blurred boundaries, and emotional confusion colliding in one explosive phone call. Witnesses close to the situation say BlueFace sounded fed up, like he was talking to someone he felt he'd already explained himself to 100 times. His voice wasn't shaking. It wasn't sad. It was irritated, almost mocking. And when he said her name Chrisean, that's when everything changed. Because calling your own mother by the name of the woman you're constantly publicly clashing with, that's not a mistake. That's symbolism. People who heard about the call say BlueFace wasn't just angry, he was drawing a comparison. One that cut deep. One that suggested he saw the same behavior, the same emotional chaos, the same refusal to take accountability. And that comparison? It devastated her. Insiders claim his mom went completely quiet after that. No yelling, no snapping back, just stunned silence. Because in that moment, it wasn't just criticism, it felt like rejection. And BlueFace didn't stop there. He reportedly went on to accuse her of doing too much, of embarrassing him publicly, of inserting herself into situations that didn't concern her. He allegedly said she needed to stop acting like the drama was about her and start acting like a parent. That's when the call crossed a line. Because no matter how old you are, no matter how famous you get, that's still your mother on the other end. And sources say the pain in her voice when she finally spoke was unmistakable. She reportedly asked one question that completely shifted the energy of the call. "So you talk to me like this, but you let everyone else disrespect you?" That question hit a nerve. Because suddenly this wasn't just about her behavior. It was about his choices. About who he tolerates. About who he checks and who he doesn't. And that's when BlueFace snapped. According to insiders, his voice rose. He accused her of always playing the victim. Of never understanding his pressure. Of acting like Chrisean when things don't go her way. That comparison again. That name again. And the worst part? He meant it. People close to the family say this call wasn't leaked by accident. It started circulating because someone involved felt like the public needed to understand just how deep the dysfunction had gone. This wasn't staged. This wasn't for clout. This was raw family collapse. And when word got out that BlueFace told his own mom to grow up, fans were split instantly. Some said he was finally setting boundaries. Others said he crossed a line you can never uncross. But here's the detail that makes this even darker. Insiders say this phone call happened right after another argument involving Chrisean, which raises a terrifying question. Was BlueFace really talking to his mom? Or was he projecting his anger at Chrisean onto the one person he knew wouldn't hang up? Because what happened next, what his mom allegedly said before ending the call, changed how everyone in the family sees him now. And once that line comes out publicly, there's no walking it back. What most people don't realize is that this phone call didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final crack in a relationship that had been splintering for years, quietly, painfully, and mostly behind closed doors. BlueFace and his mother have never had a simple dynamic. From the outside, fans always saw a loud, opinionated mom who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Someone who defended her son aggressively online, clapped back at critics, and inserted herself into his relationships whenever she felt he was being played. But behind the scenes, insiders say their bond was far more complicated and far more strained than it ever looked on camera. Sources close to the family say BlueFace grew up in a house where boundaries were blurry, where arguments were loud, emotions were unchecked, and respect often got tangled up with control. Love was there, but so was constant tension. And as BlueFace got older, richer, and more famous, that tension didn't disappear. It just evolved. Instead of school or rules, the arguments became about money, image, women, and loyalty. According to people who've witnessed their interactions over the years, BlueFace's mom never fully accepted that her son was no longer a kid she could correct or control. She still spoke to him like he owed her explanations, like he needed guidance, like his chaos was something she had the right and responsibility to comment on publicly. And for a long time, BlueFace tolerated it. He brushed it off as, "That's just how my mom is." He defended her when fans said she was doing too much. He allowed her to insert herself into his relationship drama even when it embarrassed him. But everything changed once Chrisean entered the picture. Chrisean didn't just bring chaos into BlueFace's life, she amplified every existing fracture. The yelling, the public fights, the viral moments that turned private pain into entertainment. And BlueFace's mom? She didn't stay neutral. Insiders say she openly criticized Chrisean from the beginning, questioned her behavior, mocked her emotional outbursts, called her immature, unstable, a distraction. At first, BlueFace agreed, but over time, something strange happened. The more his mom criticized Chrisean, the more BlueFace felt cornered. Like he was being forced to choose sides. Like every argument with Chrisean came with a second argument waiting at home. And according to people close to him, that pressure built resentment. Because while the internet laughed, BlueFace was stuck in the middle trying to manage a volatile relationship while also dealing with a parent who refused to stay out of it. Every mistake became a lecture. Every scandal became a, "See, I told you so." And slowly, in his mind, the lines began to blur. The behavior he hated from Chrisean, the emotional outbursts, the public embarrassment, the refusal to back down. He started seeing echoes of it somewhere else. That's why the name slipped out so easily during that call. Because when BlueFace called his mom Chrisean, it wasn't random. It was something he'd been thinking but never dared to say out loud. Insiders say the argument that triggered the call started earlier that day. BlueFace's mom had allegedly commented on a situation involving him again without asking. She reportedly made remarks that painted him as irresponsible, childish, and out of control. To her, it was concern. To him, it was humiliation. By the time he called her, he was already boiling, and when she tried to justify herself when she allegedly said, "I'm your mother, I can say what I want," that's when he snapped. That's when he said she needed to grow up. Because in his mind, being his mother no longer gave her permission to publicly shame him, to interfere, to treat him like a child when the world already saw him as a joke. And when she pushed back, when she reminded him of everything she'd done for him, that's when the comparison slipped out. Chrisean, the woman he was constantly arguing with, the woman everyone said was immature, the woman he felt was dragging him down, calling his mom that wasn't just disrespectful, it was devastating. Sources say his mom reportedly responded with disbelief at first, then hurt, then anger. She reminded him that she raised him, that she protected him when no one else did, that she stood by him before fame, before money, before everyone knew his name. And that's when she asked the question that cut deeper than any insult. "Why do you talk to me like this, but let her disrespect you?" That question exposed something BlueFace didn't want to face, because it forced him to confront a truth he'd been avoiding. He checked his mother harder than he checked the people who embarrassed him publicly. He demanded maturity from her but tolerated chaos from others, and that realization made him angrier. Not at her, at himself, which is why the call didn't end with resolution. It ended with distance. According to insiders, the conversation ended abruptly. No apology, no closure. Just a cold goodbye that felt more like a door slamming shut than a phone call ending. And within hours, word of the call started spreading through family circles. People took sides. Some said BlueFace was right to set boundaries. Others said he crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. But the real damage wasn't public yet. Because what happened after the call, what his mother allegedly said to someone else later that night, changed the entire narrative. It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. And it was heartbreaking. And once that statement gets out, people are going to see this call in a very different light. That night, after the call ended, BlueFace's mom didn't go online. She didn't post a story. She didn't clap back. According to insiders, she sat alone for a long time, phone still in her hand, staring at a screen that had already gone dark. People close to her say she kept replaying the moment he said it. Not the words "grow up," not even the anger, the name. Because being called Chrisean by her own son didn't just feel disrespectful, it felt like being erased. Like everything she had been to him, mother, protector, supporter, had been reduced to a comparison he used when he was angry. And here's the part no one saw coming. Instead of lashing out, she allegedly said something quietly to a family member that same night. Something so calm, so measured, that it sent chills through the room. "I don't recognize him anymore." That sentence changed everything. Because when that comment began circulating within the family, the tone shifted instantly. This wasn't about an argument anymore. This was about loss. Insiders say she wasn't crying hysterically. She wasn't yelling. She was hurt in a way that felt final, like a realization had settled in that something fundamental between her and her son had broken and might not be fixable. And that's when the real conflict began. Because once family members found out what BlueFace had said, phones started ringing on both sides. Aunts, cousins, people who had stayed neutral for years suddenly felt like lines had been crossed that demanded intervention. Some told her she needed to stand her ground. Others told her to let it go. That's your son. A few warned her that if this went public, it would destroy what little relationship they had left. But what nobody expected was her response. She didn't want an apology. She wanted distance. Sources claim she told someone close to her, "If that's how he sees me, I don't need to be around the chaos anymore." That decision alone shocked the family. Because for years, she had been at the center of everything. The loudest voice, the most visible presence, the one who always jumped in. Now, suddenly, she was stepping back. And that's when BlueFace realized something was wrong. According to insiders, he didn't notice at first. He went about his day, posted casually, acted unbothered. But then he realized something strange. His mom wasn't responding. No texts. No reactions. No commentary. For the first time, she was silent. That silence bothered him more than any argument ever had, because no matter how much he complained about her involvement, he was used to her being there, watching, reacting, engaged. Now, nothing. And that's when doubt started creeping in. People close to BlueFace say he began asking questions indirectly, checking with relatives, trying to feel out the situation without calling her directly, almost like he didn't know how to fix what he'd just broken. And then came the first twist. A family member confronted him, not angrily, not emotionally, directly. They told him exactly what she had said after the call, that she felt replaced, that being compared to Chrisean hurt more than anything he'd ever said to her, that she felt like he no longer saw her as his mother, just another problem in his life. Sources say BlueFace went quiet when he heard that, because suddenly, the anger drained out of the situation and guilt rushed in. But instead of apologizing right away, he doubled down. According to insiders, his response was something that stunned everyone involved. "She needs to hear the truth." That sentence flipped the conflict on its head. Because now this wasn't about heat of the moment words. It was about belief. About how he genuinely viewed her behavior, and whether he felt justified in saying it. That's when the family fracture became undeniable. Some relatives sided with him, saying his mom had crossed boundaries for too long. Others said he was projecting his frustration with Chrisean onto the one person who had always been in his corner. And here's where it gets even messier. Someone close to the family allegedly leaked that this wasn't the first time BlueFace had made that comparison. It was just the first time he said it to her directly. That detail spread fast, because it suggested something deeper, that in his mind, he had already lumped the two women together. That the respect line between my mother and my partner had blurred. And once that idea hit the internet, people reacted violently. Some defended him, saying adults have the right to set boundaries even with parents. Others said no matter how frustrated you are, you don't strip your mother of her role by calling her another woman's name in anger. But the most disturbing reaction came from people who noticed something else. They noticed that BlueFace was harsher with his mom than he ever was publicly with Chrisean. And that raised an uncomfortable question. Why is it easier for him to check his mother than the chaos he claims to hate? That question refused to go away. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get more uncomfortable, another voice entered the conversation. Someone who had stayed quiet the entire time. Someone whose opinion carried weight. Someone who knew both sides far too well. That person made one statement off camera that reframed the entire phone call. And once that statement leaks fully, people are going to stop arguing about who was right, and start asking what this says about BlueFace himself. When that statement finally surfaced, it didn't come from a blog page or a fan account. It came from someone who had been present for years, someone who had watched the cycles repeat, someone who had seen BlueFace in private when the cameras were off and the image dropped. According to insiders, this person said something quietly but with devastating clarity. He doesn't talk like that when he feels powerless. He talks like that when he feels in control. That one sentence shifted everything. Because suddenly, the phone call wasn't just an emotional outburst anymore. It was a window, a glimpse into how BlueFace handles relationships where he feels he has leverage, and how differently he behaves when he doesn't. People close to the situation say this person went on to explain that BlueFace often redirects his frustration toward the people he believes won't leave, the ones he assumes will always be there, the ones whose love feels unconditional. And in this case, That person was his mother. That's when the internet's tone changed again. The question stopped being, was BlueFace right or wrong? And became, why does he feel safe disrespecting the people who raised him? Fans began pulling clips from the past. Old interviews, old lives. Moments that seemed harmless at the time suddenly looked different. Him dismissing his mom's concerns, rolling his eyes when she spoke, talking over her, joking at her expense, while laughing it off as just family. Patterns people ignored before started lining up. And the most disturbing realization? This wasn't a one-off. According to a former associate, this behavior showed up anytime BlueFace felt cornered. When he was criticized. When accountability loomed. When someone challenged his choices. Instead of addressing the issue, he shifted the focus. He attacked maturity. He questioned emotional stability. He reframed concern as drama, and calling his mother Chrisean? That was the sharpest version of that tactic yet, because it reduced her entire identity down to a stereotype he uses when he wants to dismiss someone emotionally. That realization hurt people who had defended him for years. And then came the escalation no one expected. BlueFace's mom broke her silence, but not publicly. She allegedly reached out to someone close to her and said something that spread fast through family circles. "I raised him to be strong, not cruel." That sentence hit harder than any rant ever could, because it reframed the conflict completely. This wasn't a mother refusing to let go. This wasn't a son trying to grow up. This was a mother realizing the version of strength her son adopted didn't include empathy. And here's where the situation got even more uncomfortable. According to insiders, BlueFace heard about that comment and instead of reacting with anger, he went quiet. Not defensive, not loud, quiet. People close to him say that's when the doubt finally crept in. Not doubt about his mom, but about himself. Because for the first time, the feedback wasn't coming from fans, blogs, or enemies. It was coming from family. And family criticism cuts differently. But instead of reaching out to her directly, BlueFace allegedly made another move that stunned everyone. He went live, not to apologize, not to clarify, but to talk about growth, boundaries, and people needing to evolve. He never said her name, and that silence said everything. Viewers immediately noticed it. The deflection, the vague language, the way he spoke like a therapist instead of a son. Comment sections exploded with people calling it fake maturity, damage control, a way to avoid saying the one thing that mattered, "I'm sorry." And his mother saw it. Sources say she watched the live quietly, then turned the phone off halfway through. Her response? She didn't call him. She didn't text him. She simply told someone close to her, "He's talking to the world instead of talking to me." That sentence became the emotional center of this entire story, because it exposed the real problem. BlueFace knew how to speak publicly. He knew how to perform reflection. He knew how to frame himself as misunderstood. But when it came to the woman who raised him, he couldn't say the words that mattered most. And then came the shocking reveal. Someone leaked that this wasn't the first time BlueFace had cut his mom off emotionally after an argument. That there had been long stretches before weeks, sometimes months, where he went silent instead of addressing conflict. That pattern changed how people viewed the phone call. It wasn't just disrespect, it was avoidance. And once that pattern became clear, the narrative flipped again. Because now people weren't just questioning his relationship with his mom. They were questioning how he handles accountability everywhere else. And just when it looked like the situation had reached its peak, another message surfaced. One that BlueFace allegedly sent to someone else after the call. Short, cold, revealing. "She needs to stop acting like a victim." That message hit the internet like gasoline on fire, because now the empathy gap was undeniable. Calling your mother a victim after comparing her to someone you openly criticize crossed a line that even his supporters struggled to defend. And that's when the final stage began. Because insiders say his mom has reached a decision, one that doesn't involve public statements, interviews, or messy back and forth. It involves distance. Real distance. And if that happens, this phone call won't be remembered as just another viral moment. It will be remembered as the moment BlueFace permanently changed his relationship with the one person who never stopped showing up. And the final twist? The family hasn't spoken yet, but they're choosing sides. And once those sides become public, this situation is going to explode in a way no apology can fix. The moment people realized sides were being chosen behind the scenes, the entire situation escalated into something far more serious than a viral clip or a messy family disagreement. Because this wasn't just one argument anymore, it was a fracture. According to insiders, the family group chats went quiet first. Not dramatic exits, Not angry messages, just silence. The kind that signals people are being careful about what they say and who they say it to. Then came the subtle shifts. Certain relatives stopped interacting with BlueFace online altogether. Likes disappeared. Comments vanished. A few people who had always defended him suddenly posted vague messages about respect and knowing when to humble yourself. Nothing direct, but nothing accidental either. And BlueFace noticed. Sources say he started asking questions again, this time more urgently. Trying to figure out who had spoken, who was upset, and whether his mom had said anything else about the call. What he didn't expect was how calm she was. According to someone close to her, she wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't crying. She wasn't venting. She was resolved. That terrified him more than rage ever could. Because when someone stops reacting emotionally, it usually means they've accepted something and moved on from it. And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. A relative allegedly told BlueFace something that night that completely shook him. She's not trying to win. She's done. That sentence landed hard. Because for the first time, BlueFace realized this wasn't about who was right. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't about control. It was about loss. Loss of access. Loss of presence. Loss of the one person who had always been there even when he pushed everyone else away. Insiders say that's when BlueFace finally tried to call her again. Not to argue. Not to defend himself. Just to talk. But the call went unanswered. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. And that's when the panic set in. Because no matter how much he complained about her involvement before, he had never truly imagined a version of his life where she stepped back completely. And now that possibility was real. According to sources, BlueFace sent a text afterward. Short, carefully worded. Something along the lines of, "We need to talk." She didn't respond. That silence sent a message louder than any argument ever could. And the internet? It felt the shift instantly. Fans started noticing that BlueFace stopped mentioning family entirely. His tone online changed. Less confident, more guarded. He seemed restless, posting and deleting, going live and ending abruptly, speaking in half-thoughts. Meanwhile, his mom still said nothing publicly, which only made people speculate more. Comment sections filled with theories. Some said she was preparing to speak. Others believed she'd been advised to stay quiet. A few thought she was done with the spotlight altogether. Then came the escalation no one expected. A clip resurfaced from years ago, long before the fame, before the chaos, before Chrisean. In it, BlueFace's mom is seen defending him fiercely, saying she would always have his back, no matter what. That clip went viral overnight. People juxtaposed it with what just happened. The contrast was brutal. This is how she rode for him, and this is how he talks to her now. She never switched up. He did. The narrative shifted sharply, and BlueFace felt it. Sources say he began feeling the pressure from places that actually mattered: industry people, collaborators, even people in his own camp who quietly told him he'd gone too far. But instead of making things better, he hesitated. And that hesitation made everything worse. Because while he was deciding how to move, someone else made a move for him. A family insider, fed up with the spin, leaked one final detail that reframed the entire phone call. According to them, when BlueFace told his mom to grow up, it wasn't about maturity, it was about obedience. That revelation stopped people cold, because it suggested this wasn't just frustration, it was entitlement. The belief that because he'd grown famous and powerful, the rules had changed. That parental concern was now interference. That questioning him was now disrespect. And once that idea entered the conversation, public sympathy collapsed. People stopped debating tone and started debating values. And then, just when the situation felt like it couldn't go any further, BlueFace's mom finally made a decision. Not to speak, not to post, but to step away publicly. Sources say she declined an opportunity to appear somewhere she normally would have. No explanation given, just a quiet no. That absence spoke volumes. Because it confirmed what many already feared. This wasn't cooling off. This was separation. And as fans brace for what comes next, one final question hangs over everything. If BlueFace couldn't check himself before speaking to the woman who raised him, what does that say about how he handles everyone else? Because insiders claim the next move, whether it's reconciliation or complete cutoff, is already in motion. And once it happens, this story won't be about a phone call anymore. It'll be about a line that was crossed, and whether it can ever be uncrossed. By the time people realized this situation had crossed into something permanent, it was already too late to soften it. Because the final twist didn't come from a post, it didn't come from a live, and it didn't come from BlueFace at all. It came from absence. According to insiders, A family gathering took place shortly after everything went quiet. Nothing public, no cameras. Just relatives, some who hadn't seen each other in months, coming together under tense circumstances. BlueFace wasn't there. And for the first time, no one made excuses for him. People noticed it immediately. The empty seat, the conversations that stopped mid-sentence. The awkward looks exchanged when his name came up and then quickly disappeared again. Sources say his mom didn't mention him once. Not in anger. Not in sadness. She spoke about the future instead. That's what terrified the people in the room. Because when someone stops talking about the past and starts planning forward without you, it means a decision has already been made. One family member allegedly asked her quietly if she planned on reaching out to him again. Her response? "I already said everything I needed to say." That sentence landed like a door locking shut. And here's where the final reveal changed how everyone viewed BlueFace's actions. According to someone present, she went on to say something that reframed the entire phone call: the name, the disrespect, the comparison, everything. "He didn't just call me Chrisean," she said. "He showed me who he listens to." That line spread fast once it leaked, because it suggested something deeper than anger. It suggested alignment. That in moments of pressure, BlueFace wasn't leaning into maturity or reflection, he was leaning into the same chaos he claimed to be tired of. That the values he criticized publicly were the same ones he defended privately. And suddenly, the call made sense in a way nobody wanted it to. Because calling your mother by another woman's name isn't just disrespect, it's replacement. And once people saw it that way, the sympathy disappeared. Fans began asking harder questions. Why does he demand growth from the people who raised him but excuse behavior from the people who embarrass him? Why is accountability always framed as drama when it comes from family? And why does he only speak calmly when he's talking to the internet, but not to the people who know him best? Those questions stuck, and BlueFace felt it. According to insiders, this is when he finally tried to fix it for real. Not through vague lies. Not through motivational language. But by asking for a private conversation, no phones, no audience. But the response he got back? Not right now. That was it. No explanation. No timeline. No guarantee. And that uncertainty broke him more than backlash ever could. Because backlash fades. Silence doesn't. People close to him say his behavior changed after that. Less loud. Less performative. Almost restless. Like someone realizing too late that the thing they took for granted isn't guaranteed anymore. And as for his mom, she hasn't spoken publicly since. No shade. No interviews. No subtweets. Just distance. And distance, in this situation, speaks louder than forgiveness. Because insiders say she's made peace with something painful. You can love your child deeply, and still choose not to accept their behavior. That realization is the real ending of this chapter. Not yelling. Not reconciliation. Not viral drama. Acceptance. And that's why this story isn't over. Because unresolved silence creates pressure. Pressure creates mistakes. And mistakes bring truth to the surface. Insiders believe one of two things will happen next. Either BlueFace finally takes responsibility in a way that doesn't center himself, or this becomes the moment everyone looks back on and says, "That's when everything changed." Because some words once spoken can't be taken back. And some comparisons once made reveal more than the speaker ever intended. Now I want to hear from you. Did BlueFace cross a line by calling his own mother Chrisean? Was he setting boundaries or projecting his chaos onto the one person who never left? And if you were in his position, would you apologize privately or double down publicly? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation isn't just about celebrity drama. It's about respect, accountability, and what fame does to family. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because if this situation escalates again, and insiders say it will, you're not going to want to miss what comes next. Because the biggest question still hasn't been answered. If this is how he speaks to his mother, how does he really handle accountability at all? And now it's your turn. Because this situation isn't just viral noise anymore, it's a mirror. A mirror showing what happens when fame, ego, unresolved trauma, and family collide in public. A mirror forcing people to ask uncomfortable questions they usually scroll past. Ask yourself this honestly. If a man can call his own mother by another woman's name, not joking, not accidentally, but in anger, what does that say about how he handles respect when emotions run high? Because this wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a loaded comparison. A comparison meant to wound. A comparison meant to dominate the argument. And that's why people are still talking about it. Some fans say BlueFace was setting boundaries. Others say he crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. And a growing number of people are asking the most dangerous question of all. Why does he demand maturity from others, but collapse into disrespect when challenged? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't hold back. Do you think BlueFace was projecting his frustration with Chrisean onto his mother? Do you believe calling your mom another woman's name is emotional disrespect no apology can erase? Or do you think this was a long overdue snap after years of tension? Read the comments too, because this is one of those stories where the audience is divided, and the debate is just as intense as the drama itself. And if you're watching this thinking, this feels deeper than celebrity gossip, you're right. Because at its core, this is about power, control, and who gets spoken to with respect when emotions explode. So make sure you like this video, it pushes the conversation further. Make sure you subscribe because this situation is not finished. And turn on notifications, because insiders are already hinting that the next development will force BlueFace to choose between silence and accountability. Because one thing is certain, families don't forget moments like this. Words don't disappear once they're spoken. And comparisons like that don't fade quietly. This wasn't just a phone call, it was a turning point. And whether BlueFace realizes it yet or not, this is the moment people will always remember. When they talk about who he really is under pressure, stay locked in. Because if there's one thing history has shown us, when silence gets heavy enough, someone always breaks it.